The purpose of this teaching is to develop our ability to understand and accept ourselves and others, and to help you find the path of agape, or unconditional love. The agape state is acceptance of ourselves and others, which includes the knowledge that we are all walking our own paths and getting the lessons we want to learn, no matter how it looks from the outside. This state varies from mild tolerance to complete acceptance and love. The path of love, or agape, is the path we inevitably follow as we develop the perception of our soul. Before we can accept others, we must learn to accept ourselves. Therefore, the teaching of Michael begins with self-knowledge. We begin to better understand ourselves and our tasks and guidelines in this life. We develop greater tolerance for ourselves and reach a state of balance that allows you to act as best as possible in the situation and actualize your potential to the fullest. By learning to value ourselves, we learn to value others. The information that Michael gives allows us to understand that people should be exactly the way they are, and to see what tasks they have set for themselves in this life. Michael teaches that souls in their development go through different ages, and that at any given time we are working on the lessons that pertain to a particular soul age. This knowledge helps you to accept the fact that any person works at a level that he must fully master. Michael's teaching recognizes all spiritual paths and does not claim to be unique or the only correctness. At his first contact with people in 1970, Mikhail said,
"There is no lofty goal behind human life. Life itself is a goal, and this is just one of the stages of evolution. And evolution is a surprisingly ordered, unchanging course. Everything created must develop until it becomes the creator. We prefer not to use the word God when speaking of the supreme creative power of the universe, primarily because the word God has become masculine in your society. You have thus created and are maintaining a personification of the universal creative force that is ethereal and not physical. It cannot be personified, even for the purpose of explaining the teaching. This is a very slippery slope. For us, learning is a form of evolution. Unfortunately, the word God feeds anthropomorphic fantasies that have no place in our teaching. We will call this permanent creative force Tao. From Tao comes everything physical and non-physical. Everything must return to Tao, each thing in its own time, having undergone a corresponding evolution. There is no premature return to Tao. Evolution is an extremely slow and painful process, for only perfection is the material from which the universes are made. We ourselves are still far from such perfection, even on our exalted plane. We cannot even define perfection, which is the goal of evolution. We only know that it exists because we feel the higher state of those who are above us, just as you can feel the higher centers in the elevated souls on your planet. Human understanding is your lesson on the physical plane. Without it there can be no growth of the soul. To strive for spiritual enlightenment without reaching human understanding is to reject the true meaning of your existence on the physical plane. This is a very important point. That is why we give this teaching to all who ask. Faith is not required of you. A leaf does not need to believe in photosynthesis to be green. We do not require you to agree. You can reject anything we say. The choice is yours.
The structure of the Michael system reflects the structure of the universe. The same laws that govern man, the microcosm, can also be observed in the universe as a whole, the macrocosm. Most often in the teachings of Michael there are the laws of the 3 and the 7. The law of the three says that in every phenomenon there are three forces: affirmation, negation, and neutrality. The law of seven says that there are 7 levels of vibration or manifestation in every phenomenon. Cosmology. Michael calls the collective consciousness of the universe the word Tao. There are many universes, each with its own lessons and its own games. The universe of which we are a part has evolved towards a duality of focused and creative energies. At the same time, various energy configurations arose, of which the ternary and septenary schemes were the most important. The septenary scheme, law of the 7, manifests itself in the fact that there are 7 roles of the essence, 7 planes of existence, 7 ages of the soul, and so on. The Trinity scheme, law of the 3, manifests itself, for example, in the existence of an ordinary, exalted and neutral positions. These patterns are repeated over and over in many different forms. The motivating force is the desire of the universe to know itself. Any growth increases the level of self-knowledge. Therefore, the universe creates games in which it can gain new experiences and thus learn more about itself. One of these games is called the experience of separation, when the particles of the universe perceive themselves as something separate from other similar particles and from the world as a whole. All activity in the universe is governed by individual and collective choice. No one is born to do something that he has absolutely no inclination to do. Those who wish to remain with the Tao, in contact with its collective consciousness, may do so. A certain, relatively small, part of the consciousness of Tao decides to get a new experience by coming to the physical plane. We humans are part of that part. The individualized particles of the Tao are called fragments or entities. A fragment is a tiny piece of Tao that decides to accumulate experience in a limited and separated form, passes through 7 levels of existence and finally returns to merge again with the total consciousness of Tao. This is called the cycle of experience, or being. After the fragment is reunited with the Tao, it may stay there, play another game, or return to the physical plane again, most often, to another planet. After all, it is not interesting to play the same game all the time and make the same moves in it. The universe itself passes through various planes of existence, just as individual entities do. Generally speaking, there are 7 planes, and each of them has 7 levels. As soon as the physical plane, the first of 7, is created, Tao places in it various planets with organic life corresponding to local conditions. After that, the Tao observes the evolution of different species, waiting for the moment when they can have a mind. Representatives of the candidate species are required to be able to use the intellectual part of the intellectual center. This is where self-awareness, I know that I am, is born. The Tao then sends sentient fragments, entities or souls, into these beings. This is how an intelligent race appears. As Michael says, only 25% of the total Tao energy is in manifestation. Of these, 5%, a fifth, are sentient races. On Earth, the only intelligent races are humans and cetaceans. But there are other kinds of entities in the universe. They have their own games, about which you can write separate books, but here we will mention them very briefly. Another 5% of the Tao is in animals that have group souls. There are also devas in the universe, or nature spirits, 4%, conscious entities of stars and planets, 6%, and entities of a special kind, hard to imagine for an ordinary person, the creative hierarchies of the universe. The inanimate matter of the universe, although it has a huge mass, contains a not so large part of Tao, about 2%. Fragments that decide to go to a planet first enter the staging area. This is not a separate plane of existence, but an astrally experienced part of the Tao, where the fragments fall before going to the physical plane. It is there that collective beings are formed, consisting of approximately 1,000 fragments, who agree to be one family throughout the entire cycle of experience on the 7 planes of existence. 7 such collective beings form a frame. Most of the people with whom we have communicated throughout our lives belong to the same frame as you. Then the fragments choose the role, or the main characteristic of the entity that they will have. If we decide to have an essence double, we establish the appropriate relationship. Our essence double is usually someone outside our collective being with whom we will have a mirror relationship throughout the cycle, someone with whom we will be close in most of our lives. Our essence double may have the same role as you, although this usually does not happen. Collective beings are different. Sometimes they can consist of entities of one role, sometimes they can represent all roles. Most often there are 2 or 3 main role-playing types and a small admixture of others. For example, Michael himself consists mainly of warriors and kings. The whole collective being has a common consciousness. After fragmentation and completion of the stage of development on the physical plane, the collective being is reunited on the astral plane. Not all fragments of the collective being arrive on the physical plane at the same time, some arrive here earlier, others later. Essence doubles, however, always arrive at the same time to be together and share the same experience. In the process of incarnation, from the first to the last life, we choose our parents, the type of physical body and the culture in which we will be born. Before arriving here, we are fully working out the conditions of our future existence. We also choose our future sex and shells, the main characteristics of the personality with which we wish to operate. Coming to the physical plane means making a commitment to go through the whole cycle of experience, that is, through the various ages of the soul in a series of lifetimes on the physical plane, and then through the other 6 planes leading back to the Tao. The decision to appear on the physical plane in full consciousness can only be taken by the Tao itself, and not by its individual fragments. Such a phenomenon is called the manifestation of the infinite soul. The infinite soul does not come to learn, but to teach and help souls and entire planets in their transitional periods. The infinite soul can manifest from any of the 7 planes of existence and in any form it wishes to take. Ordinary fragments agree to forget about their connection with the Tao during their stay on the physical plane. This allows them to gain new experiences necessary for growth. Separation promotes growth. When we don't know all the answers, you are motivated to experiment with new methods. Each intelligent race is a new experiment in the development of consciousness. As the fragment matures and gains experience on the physical plane, the memory begins to return and it has a desire to reunite with the collective being and the Tao. This longing becomes very strong in old souls as their experience here is completed. Eventually, the fragment completes the cycle on the planet, deciding not to incarnate on it again, and is sent to the astral plane for further training.
Game of life. Health is wholeness. To heal means to make something whole. There is no other state of absolute wholeness other than Tao, all that is, in its original, unmanifested state. Therefore, it is impossible to achieve absolute health or wholeness on the physical plane. Healing is a movement towards health, not its achievement. Health is more of a verb than a noun. It is impossible to achieve perfect health or wholeness at one point and be stuck there forever. You can get closer and closer to this goal, but you will never reach it until you finish the game. But there is nothing wrong with the fact that integrity is unattainable. If you were to achieve absolute wholeness by the end of this life, what would you do next? It's like putting together a puzzle picture to the end. After that, there is nothing left but to start putting together a new picture, and at first it will be completely incomplete and imperfect. Tao 1 plays the game of life on the 7 planes of the universe. The physical plane is the very first. Since Tao is complete and self-sufficient, it needs an incomplete and imperfect playing field. Only then will Tao have the opportunity to do something. The whole is in balance. Movement requires imbalance and incompleteness. For example, when you are walking, you are out of balance for most of the time, falling forward. When you sit still, you are in balance. Why are you playing any game? Probably not to finish it quickly. With such a mood, it would not be worth the game to start. You play because you like to play. You enjoy the process of playing. Of course, if the game never ended, it would be too much. Strictly speaking, without an end, the game would have no form and would not be a game. As part of the Tao, we all play one huge game and many smaller games within the main game. Each has a beginning, middle, and end. We can say that the smallest game on the physical plane is one human day. There are bigger games, they take several days, months, or years. Each individual life can also be viewed as a game. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you always knew how and when the game would end, you would have no incentive to play it. Sometimes the end comes too soon. But there is always the next game. You choose the rules of the games you play. This universe is a playing board containing an infinite number of smaller boards, and all Tao beings who play these games agree to the rules. Those who play on Earth help make the rules and agree to play by them. The game isn't always easy, but despite the occasional breaking of the rules along the way, it's completely fair in the end because everyone plays by the same rules. The goal of the most important game is absolute integrity. And in the end everyone will achieve this goal. In other words, everyone will be completely absorbed in the Tao again when they complete the game. If you were to reach that goal right now, you would be missing out on a lot. Each smaller game that takes place within the framework of the main one also has its own purpose. For example, in each individual life you set a life task or goal and try to achieve it, at least to the maximum extent possible. In none of these games are you fighting against someone. The very idea of struggle is inappropriate here. Tao is absolute integrity. As part of the Tao, you are already part of the whole. You are in the universe, pretending to be unwhole in order to gain new experience and expand your wholeness. But since you are already a part of perfect wholeness, what competition can there be? How can you compete when there is really only one thing? Each of you is an individual. You have a separate physical body, but what really separates you from the rest? Is it possible to separate you from others at all? Could you exist without the presence of other human beings? Where does the skin of your body end and the air of the atmosphere begin? There is no gap between skin and air. The outermost molecule of your skin comes into contact with an air molecule. They consist of the same atoms and elementary particles, only grouped slightly differently. It's like two neighboring colors in a rainbow, one goes into the other very smoothly. If you can move your awareness from your skin through the molecules of the air, you will again find the Tao in a slightly different form when you meet another person, skin molecules again. For your convenience, air molecules are light and rare. This allows the playing piece, your body, to move freely in space. This is one of the nice things about playing on this planet. The movement of your token sets the air in motion and affects other tokens, and vice versa. In other words, everyone affects everyone. But you are not competing with anyone. When playing the game of life on the physical plane, you may of course think that you are playing against them or your team against their team. This imaginary competition may force you to play your best, but when the game is over, all the chips will go into one box. In order to play better, you do not have to fight with other players at all. You can fight with yourself, but it's not really a fight, it's not a contest, because when you win, nobody loses. It is simply a search for the best course of action, or perfection, for its own sake. It is possible to seek perfection in the game without trying to achieve absolute perfection in the here and now. Like absolute integrity, absolute perfection exists only in the Tao, but perfection as the goal of a particular game encourages you to play the game the best you can. Many people play unconsciously. Imagine that you are participating in the Olympic Games as an athlete. Athletics is a good example because it is an individual sport and not really competitive. Your actions do not interfere with the actions of other players. Now, if you're drunk, you won't be able to pole vault well. Of course, you can get some experience by trying to pole vault while drunk, but it will most likely be a traumatic experience. It is the same with those who play the game of life without awareness. The goal of many people is to sleep as peacefully as possible while playing, and sometimes external substances are even used for this. Those who wake them up, they really do not like. But more and more people are realizing that they are playing a game. When this happens to you, two things happen. First, you start playing the game more seriously. Secondly, you take the game less seriously. Everything is very important, and everything is not important at all. This attitude allows you to gain detachment and the ability to accept things as they are. You can't do anything about the current score in the game. That's the state of things, but you can start playing your best game right now. The score is none other than you, but sometimes the game seems to be going better, sometimes worse. One day you feel better, another day you feel worse. One day you win the lottery, the next day you lose your job. But such things in themselves are neither victories nor defeats. Ultimately you will win every game. How and when, we cannot predict, and if we could, we would not do it, so as not to spoil the game for you. But you cannot lose. There is nothing to lose here. You are already inseparable from the Tao, you are one with everything. When you win a particular game, you awaken to this general truth in a particular context, receiving understanding, joy and love. When you feel unwell, it means you are being given information on how to play the game better. If you are in pain, it means that you are being told that you are not playing the way you should in order to have fun. Pain is important, but not as such, it's just information. For example, you are driving a car without being fully awake. You get into an accident and, as a result, to the hospital. Your pain gives you vital information. We don't say that suffering is good, but if instead of pain you experienced pleasure in the hospital, it would confuse everything, wouldn't it? You would conclude that by playing the game worse, you can feel great. From this point of view, pain is valuable. You can think of it as your internal account card. If you feel pain, this does not necessarily mean that you have become worse. Sometimes the pain gets worse when you are healed as the hidden problems come to the surface. But in any case, pain gives you information that, by its very nature, helps you realize how you can improve your game. The presence of pain tells you about disharmony. By increasing harmony, you will ultimately reduce pain, and this shows you that you are moving in the right direction. So the more sincere you accept your pain, the sooner you will benefit from it. If Tao is perfect and self-sufficient, why does it want to play? Perfection and imperfection, completeness and incompleteness are two sides of the same coin. In a state of perfection, all the pieces of the puzzle or model are properly put together, and you know everything about it because you went through the process of putting it together. Now you may want to start collecting something else that will teach you something you couldn't learn from the previous task. A new puzzle or model is incomplete, imperfect, but as you work on it, it moves towards completion and perfection. Every time you assemble a new model, you expand yourself. We can say that the Tao is that part of us that has learned the lessons of the previous model. Tao is complete and self-sufficient. But an infinite number of models can be built, and each one is potentially more complex than the one before it. Any of your experiences is new and unique for the Tao, because its conditions have never existed before and will not be repeated in the future. So, the fullness of Tao is one side of the coin, and the incompleteness of the universe is the other. They balance each other and allow orderly movement to exist. Everything comes from Tao. If the Tao were not complete, there would be no stable basis on which the incompleteness of the universe could arise, leading eventually to greater completeness. It's like a gymnast. The internal state of balance allows him to be outwardly unbalanced and introduce a new movement into this balance. You are the dynamic part of the Tao. You are responsible for expanding the Tao. You are not an imperfect little creature crawling back to the Tao on all fours, hoping that somewhere out there the gatekeeper will open the door and let you in, home to God. You are the instrument through which all that is expands its fullness. New games enable new understanding and new kinds of creativity. Tao is the creator. Any real artist is looking for new forms of self-expression. If this is true of the individual creator, then what can we say about the main creator? Being all that is and not being able to express yourself is like being a king without a kingdom. It would be simply boring for the Tao to remain the same, unchanged, for eternity. The universe is a way of self-expression of Tao, a way to get rid of boredom. Everything has consciousness, and every consciousness expands, even the consciousness of a blade of grass. Being what it is, it becomes something more. At some point, it will be able to express itself on a larger scale and more subtly. Almost all people are at least partially asleep, functioning, but not fully aware of it. Waking up the dormant aspects of yourself is part of the game you are playing right now. Living without being fully awakened is like pole vaulting while drunk or with your feet tied. First of all, it is difficult. If you can do anything with your tied feet, how much more will you be able to do when you untie them? Sometimes athletes train like this. They limit themselves in order to become stronger. Actors also have a similar practice. They pick up a mouthful of nuts and try to speak as clearly as possible with this restriction. When the nuts are taken out of the mouth, it is much easier to maintain excellent diction. Illusion and false personality is what makes the consciousness sleep. They function like nuts in an actor's mouth or ropes on a jumper's feet. They make acting difficult. But in the process of experiencing them and then removing them, you increase your ability to play. The main goal of the game is agape, or unconditional love for everything that exists, in the first place, for everything living and intelligent. The game expands the Tao, which is love, giving it more and more opportunities for self-disclosure. Encasing yourself in a box of greed, stubbornness, hatred, and other fear-based psychological patterns, and then releasing yourself from it, as Houdini was releasing from a real chain box at the bottom of a pond, you get more agape consciousness. From the contrary, expansion occurs when your actions are motivated by love, but the experience of being motivated by fear is not in vain. It contributes to your knowledge of love. By understanding this, you transcend the polarity of love and fear. Neither one nor the other is important. You develop the ability to just be. The game we play on the causal plane is largely unrelated to the polarities of love and fear, negative and positive. We have already played this game and integrated the negative and the positive into our consciousness. We have overcome polarities and almost fully experienced the essence of things. Ordinarily, polarity lessons do not end on the physical plane. They continue on the astral plane, where a new game begins. But you can't start a new game without playing the previous one. Although the Tao has no beginning or end as you understand it, it can be said that, in the beginning, the Tao built and completed one pattern. To date, it has already completed several models. This universe is a new project. Perhaps, in the future, Tao will decide not to make more models, but to do something else. What it could be is beyond our understanding, but the Creator's nature is to create. How can the Creator not create? That's the way He's made. At the deepest level, each of us is a part of the Creator. But we are also part of creation. That part of us that is part of creation is new, incomplete. It becomes complete through our creative part playing the game. Everything you create teaches you something about yourself, because the part of you that was only potential before becomes reality and you can see it. It's not just a possibility or a possibility, it's already there. When it's complete to your satisfaction, you can move on and create something else based on your previous creation. By playing the game, you draw from the endless sea of possibilities. Depending on how you play, certain possibilities become probabilities, and certain probabilities become realities. If at the moment the game you are playing is not giving you as much fun as you would like, remember that the game moves and changes. X-ray as best as possible, you get more pleasure. When you play well, you enjoy playing. Good feelings don't always follow directly from how you play a good game, but they are inevitable. Here, in particular, is why it is worth being on the true spiritual path. It helps you learn the rules of the game. So, rejoice. Enjoy the game. Michael.